poem by my Jean Credo to get us started today, everybody. Welcome to the When the Silence Isn't Quiet, Policing in 2020 virtual town hall, coming to you live with the Prince George's County Executive, Angela Also Brooks. We are going to start this off with a poem by Poet Laureate my Jean Credo. My Jean, take it away, brother.
Hello, hello, hello. As I open Twitter for my daily use to see yet another Black body decorate the pavement for more of America's favorite racist festivities, what strangely comes to mind is the movie 8 Mile. Now we all know the smash hit movie and its infamous theme song. It goes, you better lose yourself in the music the moment you own it. You better never let it go. You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. I can only imagine what the Black boy's last moments had to feel like. 2 barrels drawn on him. Before the shot, palms are sweaty, knees weak, his arms are heavy. After the shot, white tea turns crimson. Blood on his shirt looked like he spilled his mom's spaghetti. Before the shot, the boy is nervous. But both his gunmen look calm and ready. The boy scarily yells, stop. But it's as if the gunman hears his cries, but just keeps on forgetting when he chokes out. The magazine low echoes fall on the boy's ear so loud he opens his mouth, but words won't come out. He's choking. How? The gunmen are joking now. His clocks run out. Time's up. Over. Why? I then snap back to reality. Wishing this snap was at the hand of Thanos to make this all wither away. I'm reminded villains in this timeline are indeed more fact than fiction. Racism is the biggest villain of them all, and it will take every opportunity it can to rear its ugly head and wield its jealous hand. I mean, how could the villain skip this opportunity? They better go capture this moment, and hope it don't pass them. A Black boy's last breaths sound like Mozart's greatest work on their ears. When they see a Black boy jogging, when they see him holding a toy gun, when they hear him yelling, I can't breathe with his last breaths, all they can hear in their head is, you better lose yourself in the music the moment America owns it, so you can never let it go. You only get as many shots as there are able bodies around, but still, don't miss a chance to blow. Because this opportunity comes far too many times in a lifetime at the expense of the Black boy. Thank you.
Incredible. Welcome everybody to the, once again, When Silence Isn't Quiet, Policing in 2020 virtual town hall. Coming to you live with Prince George's County Executive Angela Also Brooks. I am your host and moderator, Joe Claire of the Joe Claire Morning Show on WPGC 95.5. I want to thank you, County Executive, Madam County Executive. I might make sure I get that right. Madam County Executive Also Brooks for extending this invitation to me. You know, I considered it quite an honor to be able to serve the county that I live in and love so much. So thank you. Now, over the past week, there has been unrest, protesting, and rioting all over our great nation over the recent killing of George Floyd, a Black man who was had a white officer's knee pressed into his neck while he was face down, handcuffed, and he pleaded and gasped and said, I can't breathe. Was all too common, as we remember that coming from Eric Garner as well. So we needed today to talk about what's going on in our country. Yesterday, our county executive Also Brooks held a day of prayer and atonement from noon to midnight. So there's no better time than the present to host a community conversation addressing what is going on, everybody. So let's get right down to business, because County Executive Also Brooks has a panel, an A-list panel lined up for everybody today. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. We will begin with Madam Executive Also Brooks, because there are certain things going on. COVID-19 is happening right now. There's a pandemic, and then there's this other pandemic, this police pandemic, if you will. I'm sure everybody who's watching this can understand. If you've ever spent any time with an African-American family or person, you understand that there's a police pandemic going on in our country. So the takeaway messages and actions and hope you want to impart to the Prince Georgians, please take it away, County Executive also Brooks, and let us know what you need us to know as we start this this town hall.
So first of all, I want to just say thank you so much to you, Joe Claire. We appreciate your voice. We appreciate the pride that you have not only in our county, but in all of our Prince Georgians. And we just thank you so much for agreeing to host today, and to all these dynamic, super dynamic panelists. Do you see what I see?
Yes, I do.
Super bad assembly. Thank you so much. Judge Mathis, thank you for being here. And for all of the rest, Judge Mathis came here several years ago with me. We hosted together the Brotherhood Summit at that time, about 5 years ago, for 13 to 18-year-old boys. All of the other panelists, I want to thank you, A. Scott, our state's attorney, Pastor Tony Lee, everybody. Just thank you all so much for being on this panel today. Joe, let's just get right to it. You said a word, and I want to just start there. You said that there is some unrest right now across the country, but the truth of the matter is we've had unrest every day I can remember. I can't remember a time where there's ever been any rest for Black people in this country, and that's the truth of the matter. I've been here nearly 50 years, and the quote unquote unrest that you're talking about is a part of our everyday lives. In fact, we become so used to it. Really, there's never been any rest for us. And so what we're seeing now, even in the murder of George Floyd, unfortunately for so many of us, is all too familiar. It's not an isolated incident. It's nothing new, unfortunately. What we see now is that it's been videotaped for the rest of us to see, but the violence is on so many levels. It is the physical violence that occurred. We have economic violence, educational violence. I mean, it's just been a part of our lives. And so what I say to all who are listening is that this movement that we are seeing sweep across the world, I would say across the country, but we know that our pain is felt across the world right now, is a pain that I believe will heal a lot. I don't think we'll ever be the same again. It's similar to what we experienced with COVID. The world will never be the same again, and as it should be, because what we saw in the murder of George Floyd, again, is something that happens all too often. I'm from Prince George's County, as you are. And Prince George's County, I can say a name that to this day will cause pain. If I say Terrence Johnson.
Yes, indeed.
There are words that we say that to this day, I was 8 years old, I remember.
Terrence
Johnson, yes, when Terrence Johnson was involved in when he was detained and handcuffed to a chair as a teenage boy because he was accused of stealing some coins at a laundromat, resulted in him shooting and killing 2 officers. And we all know the story after that. I can say the name of Prince Jones. There are just so many, that all you have to do is mention the name and the pain comes back as if it were yesterday. And so this is a pain that we have really lived with over the years. But the thing I can say is that it is Prince George's County, I can speak for us, is not what it's going to be for sure. But it is not what it used to be either. I'm grateful to look on this screen and see an Aisha Brave boy. That would not have been the case. I can promise you that. Just over a decade ago, it just would not have been the case. And so that even when we had William Green, who was handcuffed behind his back, placed in the front of a police car this past January 26th, and shot and killed. He was shot 7 times by a police officer. And the difference is before nightfall, he was in jail. The police officer was in jail. That is a critical difference. It doesn't heal it because William Green should have never been killed in the first place. But we still have a lot of work to do. I am ever mindful that, again, with every passing year, we have the opportunity to be better. And Prince George's County sure is not what it used to be, although we still have a ways to go. But I thank everybody for assembling today to discuss this most important topic. And I'll say this and then pass it on. I mentioned a little earlier today what this really means. My daughter is behind me in this house right now. She's 15. She comes to me, I swear, every 15 minutes asking if I can go help her with her poster board, because she says she got some protesting to do. That she's asking me what place I can take her to downtown, because it is felt. What is happening right in this country right now is felt by everybody. My 2 friends with sons drew me to tears when she told me that her 6-year-old came to her the other night with tears in his eyes to ask her whether she thought his daddy might be killed by the police, because he's trying to understand and digest what he's seeing. My chief of staff's 10-year-old son, who she said she's been trying to console because for the last three nights in a row, he's been unable to sleep because he said every time he closed his eyes, he thought maybe he might be under the knee of a police officer. So this is a time of pain that is felt by all, but I'm convinced that it will never be the same again in this country. It will never be the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you, County Executive Angela Also Brooks, as we start this panelist, and I agree with your sentiments 100%. As many of the people here we've assembled for this panel, they all have children and we're all going through it. Let's get to our panelists right now so we can get this started. Let's get right down to business. I want to introduce panelist number 2. He is representing Maryland's 5th Congressional District. Give it up for Steny Hoyer, everybody. Is Steny Hoyer on with us?
Gotta unmute.
Yeah, that's the new thing in broadcast now. You have to unmute, Congressman Hoyer. It's right down in the left, right there. See right here where I'm pointing? It's right there. It's a little red thing. Looks like a microphone. See it? I will come back. Representing Prince George's County. She's Prince George's County State's Attorney. Everybody, come on, give it up for Aisha Brave Boy.
Thank you so much. And I will be brief because I know that primarily people want to hear our responses to the questions that you have and that some of our listeners have. So let me just say this. I am grateful to have grown up in Prince George's County. And Joe Claire, you would like to know that I am a graduate of Largo High School. So I know you know a little something about that. but like Angela, or our county executive, I'm sorry, I consider her a friend, so I'll say Angela. Growing up here in Upper Marlboro, when I first got here, there was a time when Black men were told, don't go to Upper Marlboro after the streetlights come on, and that was real. And so as the county executive said, yes, we have come a long way, but do we have further to go? Absolutely. And it would only be our own arrogance that tells us that we have made it, because we understand that we haven't. I said earlier at an event that, I am breathless. I can't breathe because George Floyd can't breathe. Eric Gardner can't breathe. My SOAR, I'm a Sigma Gamma. Sandra Bland lost her breath. But I think about the prosecutors in my office who are Black men who have to face the same struggles, leaving their homes every day. And their job is to administer justice and to work with our law enforcement officers. And I think we do a wonderful job, but we understand that we got problems there too. Now, are the problems what they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago? No, but until everyone in this community can breathe, can take in deep breaths and feel comfortable walking out of their home, driving their car, going into a store, we have work to do. And we're here to do the work, and I'm here to join my county executive in getting that work done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. We're going back to Congressman Steny Hoyer.
I've been using the Zoom a lot, and I usually don't have a problem, but I kept hitting the unmute button, and it didn't. And it's in my upper right, not my lower.
Oh, okay.
But in any event, Angela, thank you. I want to thank Angela Also Brooks. I'm not objective. I'm very subjective. I'm a big fan and have great affection for Angela Also Brooks. Not only for the job she's now doing as county executive, but for the job she did as a prosecutor, because she was fair, she was thoughtful, and she wanted to make sure she protected everybody, every citizen. And she's doing that as county executive. Angela, thank you very, very much. We are confronting, as Joe Claire said earlier on, 2 very extraordinary crises. One has been with us for a period of months. One has been with us for millennia. 400 years ago, we brought people to this country whose skin was dark, were black, and made them slaves. We had a great civil war. We had an amendment to our Constitution. And for 100 years thereafter, we had segregation and Jim Crow. And Martin Luther King told us that we could not be silent. We needed to act. And that's what we're going to do. The carnage must stop. The killing of Black men in particular, but there have been Black women as well, as you know, killed not because of anything they did, but because of the color of their skin. I've been on numerous phone calls over the last 5 days with Karen Bass, the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, former Speaker of the House in California, Jim Clyburn, whom all of you know, the former chairman of the CBC, the former chairman of our caucus, and now the majority whip. I met Jim Clyburn 50 years ago in the early 60s, and he and I were both very active together, and he in South Carolina, me in Maryland. George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Angela mentioned Green, Eric Garner, I Can't Breathe. There's an ad on television that I love. It's about psoriasis. It says, see me. See me. See me. Hear me. Hear my pain. Hear my anger. Hear my extraordinary frustration that almost every week, if not more frequently, we hear of a life snuffed out by those who are assigned to protect us, to bring law and order. Law and order is essential in our society if democracy can proceed. We now have literally hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating here and around the world, saying what's happening is wrong. I just got off the phone with Speaker Pelosi just before I got on this call. I'm going to bring a bill to the floor that I expect to have hearings next week, markup shortly thereafter, and in the week of the 22nd, within a year of the death, bring very substantial legislation to the floor. Probably 3 pieces of legislation. 2 will be resolutions. One, Frederica Wilson of Florida has offered to look at how our culture is treating men, Black men and Black boys, to see what we can do to turn that culture around. And the third will be a bill which will try to prevent, to train, and to make held accountable those when they hear, I can't breathe, do not take their hand off or their arm from the neck of Eric Garner or their knee to the neck of George Floyd. So, ladies and gentlemen on this panel, I thank you all. We're going to bring legislation to the floor by the end of this month, which will be, I think, the Civil Rights Act of the 20th century that will say no more. Black lives matter, no more. Not any kind of immunity. If you take a life, you will be held accountable. And yes, we put our police in dangerous situations. And yes, we understand they must protect themselves. And yes, we support and honor our police and law enforcement folks. But like any of us and any group, there are people who do not do right. And they must be held accountable. That's the only way it will stop. It must stop.
I agree with you 100%. And I thank you so much for taking the time today. That's Steny Hoyer, everybody. Come on, y'all give him a round of applause.
Thank you all very much. And thank you, Angela. And thank you, Aisha.
Thank you. We're going to keep this moving. We need to go to our Vice Chair of the Prince George's County Council. He's the member at large. Come on and welcome Calvin Hawkins Jr.
Thank you, County Exec, for this opportunity to speak for the County Council. In a very short statement, I would like to say words like freedom, sweet and wonderful to say. Words like freedom sing on my heartstrings all day, every day. Words like liberty almost make me want to cry. If you had known what I know, then you would know why. The County Council is in the house. Thank you, Madam County Executive.
That's Calvin Hawkins, everybody. And that'll be on his next mixtape he's dropping very, very soon. Up next is a good friend of mine. I'm glad to be in her good company. She's the radio host of The Morning Hustle from 93.9 WKYS. Y'all make some noise for Angie Ange.
Thank you, Joe Cleese.
You are welcome.
And thank you, County Executive Angela also Brooks, for the opportunity. You and I have been talking quite a bit among all of this, and I appreciate how easy and how accessible you have been to us as far as getting information to people as quickly as possible. So thank you to you and your team, first and foremost. I got to shout out Reverend Lee. I love you. Aisha Brave Boy for being so easily accessible as well when it comes to having conversations about things that are affecting our community and getting it on the air as quickly as possible. Piggybacking off of Calvin Hawkins, I just want to use two words that have really been playing in my head as I watch all this unfold and as I listen to our listeners and interact with them, and that is proactivity and accountability. What we're doing right now is reactive, but that's how this works, right? And you know, since I graduated Howard in 2006, I've probably been on multiple panels. This is my first virtual panel or virtual town hall, but we have a cycle where things happen in our community. Things are happening all the time, and then something happens that really catches people's attention. There's outrage followed by a town hall meeting, followed by people continuing to get their frustrations out. And then about a week or two, or maybe a month, it dies down. It's not the hot topic anymore. And we all go back to normal until it happens again. What I am hoping that we can get, seeing how everything is happening right now, is a level of being proactive. Looking at one of the things that bugs me about the George Floyd murder is when I see how many years these officers had at this police department, when I see how many years they had in and how many complaints and issues that they had. And I wonder, is there a way to audit our police departments, to begin to really look at how many officers have been on for years, have had complaints, and they're still there, they're still servicing the community. That to me is one way to consider being proactive. The other piece is accountability. And one thing I appreciate about County Executive also Brooks is that she wants you to hold her accountable. Ask the question. She's never telling me I can't ask or talk about something. And that's been the same for her team. So I hope out of this we get proactivity and accountability where we can, knowing we all know the problems, but now who is responsible for what and how do we go about making them accountable? We've had numerous people call in, men call in tears about police brutality that they faced at some point in Prince George's County. And they all were like, we don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And us as talent was like, well, shoot, we don't know either. And so I had to reach out to a few people to get some numbers, and I'm thankful that people were able to give me the information. But I just want to say accountability and proactivity. I hope that is what we get out of this conversation, so that moving forward, we know where to direct people and who to hold accountable and how to hold those people accountable.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate it. Proactivity and accountability, everybody. Write it down, put it in your text message. What we need. Want to keep this moving. This brother's he's a political commentator. He's a managing partner at Reed Smith. Come on, give it up for Mr. A. Scott Bowden, Esquire.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. To to the elected officials, and Ms. Also Brooks, who is a friend and just an awesome leader. I want to thank the other elected officials there. I want to share two quick thoughts with you because I want to talk about not the manifestation of what we're seeing. We've seen it way too many times. Angela talked about young people when she was growing up being killed by the police. Tony Person, who died at the hands of a hail of bullets from the Joliet Police Department, where I grew up, Joliet, Illinois. And you wouldn't know Tony Person. My dad's I'm a second generation lawyer. My dad's a retired judge. He defended the family at the inquest in Will County. And you say, why am I telling you this? Because everyone on this call, on this Zoom call, has a story. If you look at me, you would think, if you looked at my bio, I'm living the American dream. I've never been arrested before. I'm a proud graduate of Morehouse College and Howard Law School. I spent 5 years as a prosecutor in New York City, one in the Federal District of Southern District of New York. I've been at a law firm for 30 years, attained management, been on the board worldwide, and yet I've got my story about the police. Why do I have a story about the police profiling me, pulling me out of my home in a well-to-do neighborhood because a fire alarm went off, or pulling me out of a nice car, or even following me and asking me after stopping me, where am I going? I'm not saying it should happen to others, but it should happen not to me, but not to anyone. And yet, race is the tie that binds us. Economics may separate us, but we all have this story. And so, what is it? The marches and the protests are manifestations of a broader issue of underlying systemic racism that America refuses to address or deal with. And she can never reach her promise of freedom, justice, and equality until we resolve this underlying basis of racism. It simply makes no sense. Why do we have generational racism? No one is born with a racism gene. Many Black leaders have told us that. So why do we have generational racism? Because people that don't look like me are teaching, and environmentally, and families are teaching their kids to hate, to be racist, to practice white privilege, to practice white supremacy. I'm not going to apologize for that, because that's the only way you get from slavery to Jim Crow to race discrimination to the civil rights movement until 2020. We're teaching our kids to hate. And so there's got to be, with our elected officials, business leaders, we've got to address the hard work of eliminating systemic racism. And that's creating a dialogue where we are fearless in talking about how we feel. I want my white and Black and brown and yellow brothers to discuss fearlessly what's driving this country. What's your fears? But more importantly, how do you want America to be versus what it is? It simply has got to be better. And so I hope that this discussion, we can talk about those underlying causes and come up with some real solutions, not just on this Zoom call, but a national dialogue on this and real action with those who have the power to do it. And so I certainly have ideas on police reform, and I'll end on this note. I'm not a big fan of people when I'm on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC telling me we got a few bad police officers, and these police officers don't represent the majority of police officers. Let me tell you something. If you tolerate bad policing, if you tolerate police brutality and racial profiling, like those 3 other cops did with, in this latest case with Floyd, then you are part of the problem. You are complicit, and yes, you are bad. And so I don't care if you're good and you're a good police officer. If you tolerate that, you need to go as much as those who are the bad apples that are doing the actual killing or abusing. And let's not Let's not try to separate that out, because that doesn't address the systematic problem we have with the police department. So I hope we have a thoughtful discussion. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brother Bolden. I really, really appreciate that. And I hope to hear more from you in the coming months. Right now,
Joe, can I interrupt a second? Steny Hoyer. I've got to go, but Anthony Brown was going to be, Angela invited Anthony to be with you, Congressman Brown, who's my partner representing Prince George County. He is in a markup of the National Defense Authorization Act, so he could not be here. And I wanted to let you and the viewers and listeners know. He wishes you well and wishes he could have been here, but he's in a markup.
Well, thank you very much. And tell him, tell him thank you very, very, very much. We appreciate it.
I'll do it, Joe. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
We are going to go to my man, who I no disrespect to anyone on the panel, but I've been waiting to hear my brother speak. I've been a fan from day one, representing from Detroit. And I have to say, one of the realest people I've ever seen on American television. Everybody, please put your hands together for the one and only Judge Greg Mathis.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother, for having me. And let me say a special thank you to my sister, also Brooks, whom I've had the privilege of working with for over 10 years, focusing primarily on Black youth. Let me start by saying I have a perspective that comes from living on both sides. One, in the sense that I was brutalized consistently by the police growing up in Detroit in the tough housing projects. And later, of course, I became a judge and have witnessed the abuse from the police, from the law enforcement side. In fact, it is my belief that most men living in poverty, and particularly, we view the police as the enemy. Why? Because of the repeated abuse. And secondly, because of the fear. They fear us, we fear them when you're living in a crime-infested community. And so it is that they demonize us. We think that we fear them as our enemy. They fear us as demons. In fact, what we found in my service with the My Brother's Keeper, where I was on the Criminal Justice Task Force, is that the reason for much of the police abuse is based on the stereotypes that are aired in the evening news, where they show Black men frequently as impoverished, drug-addicted, criminal-minded, angry sexual predators. And quite frankly, that demonizes us. In fact, the police officer who killed Michael Brown in Ferguson, he stated that Michael Brown, his eyes turned red like a demon, and therefore he shot him dead. The Bible tells us, what do you do with a demon? You cast them out. And so I, in many ways, believe that that is a mentality we must address. Secondly, I believe economics plays a major role in it, in the sense that, and hear me, in the sense that historically, law enforcement has been used, particularly toward African Americans, as a means to protect the property of the moneyed interests, going back to slavery, when, of course, we know that even after slavery, the laws were passed to allow the sheriffs and others to arrest Black men who had no place to live. So they called them wanderers. I'll think of the word, the crime very shortly. And they were arrested. And vagrants, they came up with the vagrant law, meaning if you were walking around, of course you were walking around because you had no place to live. You had just been freed from slavery. You were then arrested, placed in prison on the chain gang and working for profit, for protecting the interests. Then, of course, whether it's 20 slaves and the sheriffs is protecting the interests, or whether it's a $20 fake, a fake $20 bill, it's the same. They're protecting the money interests. And so I believe that that's the mentality that they have subliminally, even with Black police officers who also engage in abuse. I think white folks white police officers had have the added element of white supremacy and of you are the enemy and you are a demon because I've been programmed to believe you're a demon, but they also feel that we must protect the property of the money interest. That's what you've been hearing the last few days. The George Floyd's issue has dissipated so much. The main issue has been looting. Well, let's start from the fact that there are many shootings that came before the lootings. So the lootings are a result of all the shootings, and now as the fixation of our brother Floyd. And so that's the perspective I want to bring to it. And I have some solutions, and those solutions do not involve rehashing the same old thing, sensitivity training for the police. We had that since Trayvon Martin, and we have seen 6 other deaths, shootings of unarmed Black men by police officers. It continues to happen. We had 22 states that we campaigned in and successfully won changes in the legislation in those states regarding stand your ground laws. We've had many other attempts and training of officers, etc. And let me say this, and then I'll allow you all to move on to someone else. I'm a lawyer and we talk all the time, so I'll cut it off. But what we see once again is Black men being demonized and attacked because we're viewed by society as demons. And lastly, in the locker room, when you look at athletes, in the locker room, that's where it goes down. They hold each other accountable. You don't need the coach to come in there and tell them what to do, the police chief. All you need is your fellow players to look at each other and say, we're going to perform tonight. You saw Last Dance with Michael Jordan. You saw what he was doing to him in the locker room. Why can't the fellow police colleagues do that to each other in the locker room, in the police stations before they go out? Apply that peer pressure to make change.
Judge Greg Mathis, I love it, and I thank you. I wish I could let you go on. I wish I could let you go on.
We'll get to the solutions. When we go there, then I'll continue.
Yes, indeed. Next up, behind the judge and lawyer, we have a reverend. Great friend of mine, works with us at WPGC, and he is representing for the Community of Hope AME Church. It's Reverend Tony Lee. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Joe, man, it's great to see you, bro.
I have a great question for you. They wanted me to go straight to questions. And the question is, what can each individual Prince Georgian do to affect change here in our community?
So I think in order to affect change and what you can do individually, I think it's twofold. One, I think it's to find your voice, and 2, to find your place. To find your voice and to find your place. In this kind of season, this kind of moment, all of us have something to say. That's why the county exec has brought us together even on this forum, because what you have to say is important. Sometimes you can feel as if what you have to say doesn't matter. Sometimes you can feel like what you have to say isn't important and nobody cares what you have to say. But you have something to say. We need you in this moment, especially our young brothers and sisters, to find your voice. But the second thing is to find your place, because you don't just have something to say, you have something to do. And so we need you to find your voice, to be able to articulate what the needs are, what your concerns are, what the issues are in your hood, what the issues are in your neighborhood, what the issues are on your block. But then we need you to find your place and find how you can help to be a part of the solution. Because it's not just talking about what the issues are, but it's also about finding out, what can I offer to help make a change? Part of that is to get engaged in the political process. Finding your voice means that you're not just talking around the way to the people around your way about what your issue is, but you're going and talking to the folks who are in institutional authority and telling them what changes need to be made. But the other thing is finding your place means that you can actually do something that when folks in power are not doing what they need to do, you can vote them out, you can run for office, you can shape things in community to be able to help make those changes. And so I think that as individuals, if you find your voice, you find your place, then that's when you can find your power, and that's when you can make a change.
Thank you, brother. I know that's right. They need to put that on the back of money. You said a word right there. We're going to go to our county executive, Madam County Executive also Brooks. The question that I've been handed is the incident in Langley Park the other night. They wanted you to speak on it and expound on it, please.
So, you know what I learned about this last night. And it is a disgusting incident that was captured on video, where you see a young man who apparently was stopped by the police in Langley Park. He was Latino. The officer ran, grabbed him, threw him on the ground. And the next thing you saw him punch him and you saw him kick him. He was trying to get him in handcuffs. So this happened last night. And the officer and his colleague who was involved with him have both been, their police powers have been suspended without pay, as well as the person who supervised them has also been suspended without pay. Now, what I can tell you about it is it's inexplicable. There's no reasonable explanation that anybody can provide for why that happened. What we know is that it should not have. If I go to work and I kick and punch you, what do you think happens to my job? And so, you know, there's no way to provide an explanation for why it happened, but I can tell you what should happen when these things occur. First of all, it is my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree with me, that in that instance, the person should be fired. But we have a lot of work to do legislatively to ensure that the police, the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights has to be revisited. It's a concept that people have been reluctant to go to, but it should not be the case, no matter what your job is, that if you commit an act like that when in plain sight or out of plain sight, that we should have to go through 1,000 different loops to correct it. So we have some of these systems in place that have to be corrected. The other thing I'll say about that particular incident, and I'll say about policing in general, is that we have to do a better job of screening the people who we accept into our police academies and onto our forces. And mental health is a very big issue. It really is. It's not just screening who comes on, but I want to know what we're doing. And this is something that we're working on in Prince George, is to put a system in place. And I had ordered that this would happen several months ago, that we need to go back and look at our officers and determine whether or not they're fit to serve us. Many of these people have been involved in one incident after the next, and there's nothing automatic that requires you to come back before me to determine whether or not you're fit. If you have the right to take my liberty and take my life, I need to know whether or not you are mentally fit to do the job. And I think that's fair, not only to the citizens, but that's fair to the officers to ensure, because they don't want to serve next to people who are behaving this way either. So that's what I can say about Langley Park. You know, that's as much as we know. I've learned about it 24 hours ago. We are forwarding the case to the state's attorney who is here. And I'm sure that she will take it from there. But for our part, his police powers have been suspended.
Thank you. People wanted to know. I'm going to open this up to maybe 2 or 3 people. And as you can see, I have this in my ear. The producer is saying, please be brief. Let me, everyone, please. The only one who gets to talk long is the county executive also Brooks. Everybody else, and Judge Mathis, everybody else, keep it quick. And I'd like to get your thoughts, starting with you, Judge Mathis. I'd like to get your thoughts on those amongst us who want to protest, but through frustration and anger, find themselves becoming destructive, find themselves becoming looters, or just becoming destructive. What would you say to a young person who's headed out this evening? Can you give them 10 seconds or whatever you have of advice?
Sure. I tell them to stop being suckers. You know, they're really following those who are hijacking peaceful protests that we historically have engaged in. So when you engage, and really it's a crime of opportunity when they go to looting, but you're following those who have turned violent, and then they send you in there like a sucker, and you come out and you're the ones that go to jail. So that's what I would suggest. Wake up If you're going to be out there protesting, know what you're doing and don't follow some folks who would get you locked up and then they go home to suburban Seattle or some other city that they live in while they've gotten your black behind locked up.
Boy, I knew the real Judge Mathis was going to show up. That's what I needed this afternoon. Thank you so much. Calvin Hawkins, same question. Calvin, you got to hit the unmute.
I'm acting like Congressman Hoyer. I would agree with the judge. We cannot turn our pain into the kind of power we need to change our community. Don't go out there, someone who spent 6 years of my life in prison, young brothers and sisters, that's not where you want to be. You want to be somewhere where you could be productive and one day serve on the county council or even become a judge or a county executive or even a preacher or a state's attorney.
I got you. Thank you. Sister Brave Boy, we're coming to you now. The question that I have for you is, how do you, and what do I say to people and how do you believe we build trust between law enforcement and the African-American community? How do we start to do this in your eye?
I mean, that's the struggle that we have every single day. I think one is a level of transparency. You know, when I think about my office, I'm just going to be real and raw with you today because I think it's important that we just speak truth to power and that we also let you know where some of the flaws in our system lie. The truth is the use of force issues that may occur on the streets, my office may or may not know about. It all depends on whether or not it gets forwarded to our office for review. And I would say the vast majority don't. And so there is a determination made not by my agency, but by a review of internal affairs for the police department that allegations were not, let's say, sustained. And therefore it does not get to my office because there is no consideration for a criminal prosecution. And that may actually be appropriate in some cases, that a criminal prosecution is not appropriate. However, what happens is that once an allegation is made, oftentimes the person making the allegation has absolutely no idea what happens after the allegation is made. And they don't know what, if any, disciplinary actions or steps were taken against the officer. And so because we don't have that level of transparency, inherent in that is a level of distrust. And when I hear, well, you guys are prosecuting a case and that officer has all of these complaints, I don't necessarily know about all those complaints because it doesn't come to me. So as Ms. Alsobrook said, we do have to revisit LEOBR. We want to protect, obviously, everyone who works in government. We want to protect their rights. However, when you wear a badge and you carry a gun, you have taken on a special role that no one else has. You have the ability, if authorized, to use deadly force. No one else in government has that ability. And so with that come certain responsibilities and certain expectations that maybe other officials don't have. And so we do need to relook at that, because I really think that it would do a lot of service to the prosecutions in my office and to the relationship between the community and the and law enforcement overall. We need a greater level of transparency, especially when we have allegations of misconduct or excessive force happening in our communities.
Thank you so much. I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. I want to see, I need to know everything. Tell it all. Matter of fact, it should be in the Washington Post every day. I did not get to introduce Dr. Belina Shaw. She is from the health department. And Dr. Shaw, are you with us?
I'm here.
Yes. I have a question about processing all of this. As everyone on this call has stated, we have been trying to process this and make and understand this in our lives forever. But like many people, we're parents. We have children. And how do, especially kids at this time, what do you say to them to help them process all of this negative stimulation that's coming their way?
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you, Madam County Executive, Dr. Askew, Dr. Carter, for having me. And I think the most important piece to this is first to stop the stimulation, or to control the stimulation. So I think it's important for children and youth and families to know, and this to be a family affair, but I think that it's also important to control the way that individuals receive the information about what's going on. So I personally know I cannot sit and look at Facebook all day with my very intelligent friends posting all these posts, because after a while it's too much. I was in Baltimore in 2015 and was living and working in Baltimore City. And I know that when I started to see what was going on in DC, I realized that I needed to limit my access to media and how I was going to access media. So I think that's the first piece, is that the stimulation has to be controlled. And I think that the second piece to this is to tell children that this is not a new struggle, that they're seeing it in a new way, but that this is a historical battle. And I think that right now, with especially how this is all piled on with COVID-19 and this pandemic, the medical pandemic, then just with this overlap of these social issues just coming to play, that it does seem like our world is spiraling out of control, and there's so little control. And I think the key piece is to remember that where we have come from to where we are now, there has been a lot of progress, that this has been effective in the past, that we have gone from the civil rights movement and having a Black president, and that this is not the end all, even though it may, especially when you have so much stimulation coming consistently at you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to go up there and talk to my kids in just a minute. Speaking of the youth, we have Nicole Jackson-Young from the Office of Community Relations. Nicole.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. All these grown people are sitting here telling everybody what it's supposed to be. You, with being the young person, please tell us, give us your perspective on what we're discussing today, specifically with the question I just asked about how you guys are processing this and how you see us moving forward.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much, County Executive, for hosting this forum. I'm a proud civil servant of progressive local government. And I believe that in order for us to move the pendulum forward, we have to create a platform for our youth. And that's what we're attempting to do with Youth Speaks. We have to provide that civic engagement to our young people. And we need to have that infrastructure in place so that they know it exists, not when a situation arises, but on the continuum. And so you heard from Mr. Creedle, who opened us up with the poem, Bowie State University student. We have other young people on the call, and they're choosing to be here today. And I think that's paramount, because we've got to make sure that as we talk about solutions, we include the future in those solutions. We pass the baton of government, the baton of processes, the baton of legislation to our young people so that we can effectuate change.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Scott Bolden. Hey, Scott Bolden.
Yeah.
I need you to give me a quick sound bite. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but they said, tell him we need a quick sound bite.
That's discrimination against lawyers. That's discrimination. Angela?
Look, Aisha, write that down, because we're going to have to file some. We can't have Scott treated like that. Write this down. I want this investigated and figured out. We're going to send it and let Judge Mathis figure out who did right and who did wrong. You see what I mean?
Judge Mathis said, I've heard enough, Mr. Bolden. I said I heard enough.
Send you out of my courtroom. But the question is, what are our rights as protesters?
Well,
real simple question.
You and be quick about it. Well, you certainly have the power to gather. You certainly have the power to voice your concerns under your First Amendment. You actually can yell, scream, But again, you've got to follow the law. You can't break any laws in the process. So if you throw projectiles at the police, if you assault a police officer or the military that's out there, if you break the law by looting in and out of stores, then yes, you can be arrested. But you're certainly free, whether you've got a right, a permit to peacefully protest or not, especially in DC. You don't really need one. You can voice your First Amendment as long as you're not breaking the law in other areas.
Got you. Thank you so very, very much.
That's short enough?
Man, y'all, boy, you know exactly. You know who's in my ear. You must.
And y'all not gonna mess with A. Scott Bolden. Aisha, we're gonna need some charges for. They're not gonna be able to mess with A. Scott Bolden.
You know, A. Scott is a Howard Law Bison like me, so yeah, y'all need to back up. Back up.
Our next question is for you, Judge Mathis. Not specifically George in the George Floyd case, but the question is how people are kind of confused on how charges against law enforcement actually work. And I guess what they're alluding to is it's often difficult to bring charges, and then we see charges minimalized as opposed if it was civilians. So could you speak to that briefly?
Yeah. So let me thank your current state's attorney for making it so clear about how things go at the police level before it gets to the prosecutor. She really broke that down. I applaud her for doing that, and I applaud her for being a great successor to Al Brooks. And let me say that in many instances, as our state's attorney has said, one, we're not in on the discussions about whether they should be charged and what type of charges. In this instance, what we see with George Floyd is they've undercharged him in most of our opinions. However, they could amend that charge, and I think it's likely that they will. They needed to get a charge.
Judge, they upped to murder 2 this afternoon, by the way, Judge.
Oh, great. Yep. Yeah. Okay. And so we also expect for the other 3 police officers to be indicted. But they were. See, y'all got me on here. I can't even see the news.
Get it?
You know a little bit about what I'm talking about there.
Yes, you do. Yes, you
but they had to be careful, otherwise they'll be dismissed. And the other thing we should know is that we need to vote so that we can vote prosecutors like Aisha in and vote prosecutors like the one who prosecuted Zimmerman out. In fact, in Ferguson, Missouri, only 14% of the people voted during the election prior to Michael Brown's death. However, and there were 0 Black elected officials on the city council as mayor or police chief. However, within a few years, that next election, the city council tripled with African Americans, or you had 3 more. And then you had a Black prosecutor who was more considerate. And now you have a Black mayor elected yesterday of Ferguson. So if we're able to vote and vote those in who protect our interests and vote those out who don't, that's a great solution for us to have to work with within the justice system. We can call the shots in the justice system.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate that. Ange.
Yes, Joe, I was just about to say, I got to get ready to go.
Yeah, we knew you had to go. That's why they told me come to you.
Okay.
The question is, since you have so many young people who follow you and look up to you, what solutions do you have for the youth?
To be brief and to the point, I would say to all the youth, right now I feel like the vibe that I'm getting is that people are trying to figure out where they fit in all this and what their role is in all of this. Because everyone has been affected by it, especially young people. And I think the biggest difference that you're seeing is that for our generation, where before you may have seen it over and over again on television and the radio. So we have it on the television, we have it on the radio. Then every time we open our phone, we're reliving it, re-seeing it, just in those moments. And then again, like the fact that I open up my phone, I see what happened in Langley Park with the officers. That's right here in Prince George's County. So I think that there are so many young people that are trying to figure out, what do I do? What can I do? And what will my role be? And not everybody has that voice just yet. Not everybody knows what they can do, but I would encourage all young people to just stay positive, stay in a good place to look at, like, what are my options? Because I honestly feel like out of all of this, we're going to get some young people that are going to say, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to become an attorney. I'm going to become a judge. I'm going to become an officer because I don't want this to be my future or my children's future or my little brothers and sisters' future. So to all young people and to anybody who has children and you're trying to figure out, what to say to your children, I would say, I think right now, young people, we trying to figure out what is our role in all this, because not everybody is a protester. Not everybody is a reposter, retweeter. Not everybody is clever with the wordplay on their social media. I would just say continue to observe it and continue to, as Reverend Lee said, find your voice. And that could be in so many different ways. If for nothing more, let it be voting. Let it be actively participating as a citizen of Prince George's County. So to all the young people, man, it's all good if you don't have your voice yet. You'll find it, and just get off social media as much as possible, because it is driving us all crazy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you for letting me join in, and I appreciate everybody on this panel. And I do see quite a bit of questions, and I do also feel that the police chief, I'm not sure what his schedule was, but I do feel that from the questions that I've seen, there are a lot of questions that are for the police chief to answer and to let us know, like, what's up. So I'm not sure where he is or where his spokespeople are, but I think moving forward, that's important too, if we're gonna have this conversation.
Angie, thank you, Angie. Can I tell her, Joe, thank you so much, Angie, for getting on the call. We'll get the chief on here. I invited all the panelists, but we do it with the chief was on another one this afternoon. He'll be on a panel discussion, I think at 6. But you know what? It's my apologies. We could have had him on here. In other words, it's not that we didn't, that he didn't want to be on it. So we'll have to invite him on. You're absolutely right. He has something to say too, and we'll make sure this is the first of many discussions, but we'll get him on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You guys have a great one.
Thank you, Angie.
And I love y'all, man. Prince George is proud over here. Let's keep it going.
That's right.
She told the man, what's up? Reverend Lee, can I hear from you real quickly what the faith community says to young people and parents about the same thing I just asked Angie about, how you proceed from here?
So I guess a couple of things. One, I think the faith community has to be very clear that systemic racism is evil. And so we can speak from a faith kind of a place to say that is not good. That is not how God would want this world to be. That is not in God's order or God's plan. And so one, we can say that. Two, we can say that as faith community, that it's much more on us not to just pray, but to do. And so as churches, the Black church, and I'll speak specifically as a Black preacher, the Black church has been that place historically that has helped us organize, strategize, been the safe place, been the ark of safety, and been a place where we groom leadership for times such as this. And so for young people, I do believe there are many churches that have spaces for you, that are arms open for you, that can help you to figure out how to navigate this space, can help you figure out how to organize. I know even in our church, we've got a social justice ministry, and we're working, there's a group of young people in Prince George's County who had reached out to me earlier today, some Atlanta students who live in Prince George's County who are shaping a peaceful protest this weekend. And they said, Rev, how do we do it? Rev, could you put it up on our platform? Can you put it up on your Instagram? And so we've already put it up on our social media, etc. And so I would say the church is here for you to help you once again find your voice and your place. And we can help you with tools. We can help you with space. But I believe that you have what you need, but we want you to be able to understand that what is happening is not right, and it is not God's will, and it's evil.
Thank you, Reverend Lee. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure I speak for everybody else. We saw you getting into that Reverend cadence and that breath. I thought we was about to hear a word, but they telling me he can't go into the sermon right now. Calvin Hawkins.
Excuse me, hey Joe, you know what? When you come after the council member, can I let you know that the chief is on the line? I made a mistake. He's been on the line all along.
Really?
So I apologize for that. So after the council member, I am sorry, I'm remiss. The chief has been on here the whole time waiting to speak. So I'm sorry about that.
Well, hello, Chief Stawisky. Get to you in just a second. I know. Calvin Hawkins, the question that we have for you is, how can we make young people understand, and people who are emerging into adulthood, understand the importance of voting?
Thank you for that question. The importance of voting for someone like me, as I said earlier, growing up in Glass Manor over in Oxon Hill at Bowie State University, at 21, I ended up doing an armed robbery and ended up doing 6 years in prison. I came home and made a commitment at the time. I was a teenage parent. At the time, my 4-year-old daughter came to see me and she said to me, "Daddy, why are you in here? When will you get a chance to come to my school? All my friends' fathers come on Father and Daughter, Father and Son Day, but I can't never go. I got to take my grandfather." And that moment there transformed my life. And when I got out, I said I was going to work as hard as I could to do the right thing, to be there for my daughter. And I close with this. For those young people who are struggling with the importance of voting, Calvin Hawkins, as a returning citizen, would not be able to serve on your county council if it were not for the power of the vote and those who saw the redemptive power in me and the opportunity to transform my life. I would not have the chance to work with a county exec, Angela Alston-Brooks, or a state's attorney, Aisha Braveboy, or the chair of our county council, Todd Turner. So vote. Don't let nobody, and I'm gonna use what the judge said, don't you be a sucker and not vote, because that's where our power is.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Dr. Shaw, can you give us 3 quick best practices for young people to understand and deal with death and grieving?
That's so important, and especially now because we've had this overlay of death coming before this with COVID. So I think that number one is that death and grieving is an important part of the process. So I think that it's so easy to just put it out of your head and to not acknowledge what happened. And so I think the first piece is acknowledging that it's hard, and just to continue to think about, and then we'll go into the second one, is to think about the positive pieces of what happened to the person that passed away. So if you have, if it were, your mother, father, whoever, a friend who's been, lost in the hands of violence, to remember the positive times and the positive experiences, and just to continue to focus on those positive memories. And then the third piece is that we want to also think about rituals. Like, how do we create, as a society, we have funerals as rituals, for example. And the difficulty with COVID-19 is that has been taken away from us in some ways, but we want to think about ways to memorialize and take it over. So a personal story is that my grandmother passed away around Christmas time one year. All of us said we don't feel like cooking Christmas dinner anymore. We feel we're tired, we're cooking a pot of spaghetti. Every year since then, we've cooked spaghetti at Christmas. It's that we reclaim that ritual in a way that it honors her memory and in a way that we understand as a family.
Thank you so much. I'm going to incorporate some of that into my own life. So, Scott Bolden.
Yes, sir. How long do I get to talk this time?
Okay.
What's the time limit this time?
Well, what do you? This is the question for you, my brother. And keep it kind of longy, briefy, long and brief. What do you tell your son when you
Hold on.
The house?
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
What do you tell your son when he leaves the house?
Oh, listen, what I tell my son who's 16 and my daughters who are 25, both have been to peaceful protests. Erica and my son were down this morning. The twins were
giving water and milk away in Lafayette Square, and left right before the shooting and the military moved in to move those peaceful protesters. I certainly asked him about how he feels. I asked him why he's going to the protests. And I listen to what he says. And I'm so proud of him and my daughters who want to take a stand, who just from a human decency standpoint, say this is wrong. I'm proud to say that one of their 3 observations was they were happy to see so many people that didn't look like them peacefully protesting. And I tell them in regard to being stopped by the police, I have those conversations, not just with my son, but with my daughters as well. Yes, sir, no, sir, get your license out, right? You affirmative, you're professional, you're direct. And unfortunately, if they become abusive, right, you've got to remember their badge number, their names, and hold it down, because you're not going to change the police mind once they commit to arresting you on the street. You can't do anything about that, and that your daddy is going to take care of it later, for sure.
Thank you. Hey, Nicole.
Yes.
Can we get a little bit more information about Youth Speaks?
Yes, you can. So Youth Speaks is our initiative to create what I spoke of, that civic engagement for our young people. We began 2020 hosting a closed mic listening session where some of our poets did poems on community-centric issues, and we had a Q&A. On June 13th, we're going to do a virtual closed mic listening party, if you will. We're calling it the Youth Speaks Crisis Cool Down. And it's going to be an opportunity for our young people to engage with us, local government, as well as their peers, to talk about the issues and challenges that they face. So if you're on the call, please follow up with us. We will get that information out to you. But June 13th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., we will host the virtual Youth Speaks Crisis Cool Down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, a brief question for Judge Mathis. Judge Mathis, Prince George's County is a unique place in that we do have so many African Americans who are in positions of power or people of professional background. What would you say to Prince George's County, since you're from Detroit? What would you say we could actually do to use our power and leverage that to actually make an impact?
Yes, Prince George County is viewed around the country as perhaps the highest number of African Americans doing well, and in numbers as well. So you all can set a great example. And what I would suggest is that you continue some of the work you're doing there. Ms. Also Brooks began doing deterrence as prosecutor, as state's attorney. State's attorney Aisha is doing a great job with the similar program, so that we show that our young people, that we love them, and that the prosecutor doesn't just try to lock them up. Many of us try to lift them up. And that's the type of messages we must send. We must also send messages to the police that, hey, these young folks, we have to be honest, they view you guys as the enemy in the inner city, in the impoverished communities. In fact, I'm scared when the police get behind me because of my experiences over the years. Police officer behind me, I'm nervous, it's fearful, and I'm a judge. So we have to have a county exec and a state's attorney that will bring them together to eliminate the fear, to put them at the same table. I did something similar in Memphis. I was going around the country doing some organizing against street gangs. I brought both the police chief and the street gang members together, and they were able to come, and we made sure that there were no other law enforcement. There was immunity for any of the folks that they had warrants out. Those who had, of course, violent warrants out didn't show up. They knew that game a little better, but they came together. And they came to an understanding in the crime rate in Memphis, in the particular areas where those gangs floated around, went down. And so we must bring them together, turn toward each other instead of at each other. And I applaud what's going on there. And you all continue with that great example around the country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. County Executive also Brooks, I understand
Yes.
we have a special guest, not a special guest, but we have someone we want to talk to on the line.
You know, while he's unmuting, can I just say I have to run because I have to be on another town hall this evening, and they want all the panelists to get on now. So I do apologize for having to leave a little early, but I really want to say I appreciate
Thank you.
the leadership of County Executive also Brooks. You know, as state's attorney, I am unafraid to do my job, and part of the reason why is because she was unafraid to do hers when she was in this position. And so I want to let her know I appreciate her. I look forward to continuing to partner with her. And you know what? We're going to make all of these improvements together because that's what it's going to take. So thank you all so much. And I'm sorry I have to leave.
Thank you so much, State's Attorney. Thank you.
We appreciate it. We know you about to go watch Obama. Ain't nobody.
Hey, Joe. Joe, I'm on that same panel too. So County Exec, thanks so much. Bless you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Lee.
Bless you, man.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Joe, I think the chief is trying to get in.
I understand we have Chief Stawinski on.
Yes, sir, I am present.
Man, there is a lot that was said today, and we, Angie Ange from 93.9 KYS just left, and she said a lot of these questions have to be asked of the Chief of Police here in Prince George's County. So can you since you're joining in and you missed some of that, can you briefly give us your thoughts? Because I know that you knew you were getting on with us today. Can you just go ahead and give us your thoughts, your organic thoughts today?
Well, let me do this. And I'm part of that next call as well. But it was important for me to have the opportunity to respond to Angie on behalf of this department and certainly on behalf of our county executive. You know, I've been here since the beginning, and I agree, proactivity and accountability. And those are two things that I have focused on during my administration. There are a lot of questions. I'm not going to try to defend myself, but some of the issues that have been raised, and I will go on Angie Ange's radio show, and I'm happy to answer every question. I'm not hard to find, and I always am prepared to answer those questions. And if I don't have that answer, I'll get that answer. But there's three things I want to focus on very briefly. Coming back to these questions of, and I think the judge is the one who mentioned it, you know, we don't need sensitive training. I agree. We don't need the kind of things we've done. In fact, my comments this morning were very straightforward. You know, I thought we could come into this department, we could use our ability to look at the structures we have, we could improve those structures, we could reform those structures. And I'm not from someplace else. I also am a Prince George's County native, but I've concluded because of these repeated instances, and again, I alluded to it earlier, I've prosecuted 4 police officers for assault since I became chief in 2016. This is my first time. I've prosecuted 4 police officers for assault, and now we find ourselves here again. So those structures need to be torn down and rebuilt. But I am not late to that game. I want to make it clear that this is an issue that I have been raising, and what I did about it in 2018 was to get Dr. Chris Marsh from the University of Maryland, a doctor of sociology, to come into this department. And this entire department was taken through implicit bias training in 2018 in order to begin a very difficult conversation. And again, that was not without prompting. That was not based on something like this. That was about looking forward and understanding that I've got black officers and white officers and brown officers who are divided from one another. I've got a community divided from them, and trying to find a way to get into that space. And it was very contentious. And there was a lot of pushback from all corners. But Dr. Chris Marsh led us through that, and she continues to present to our officers every year to continue that difficult conversation. The county executive alluded to it. I talked about it earlier. The law's got to change, but I'm not late to that. I introduced legislation. I am the president of the Maryland Chiefs of Police Association this year. I got all the chiefs of police in this state and all the sheriffs in this state behind me, and I took a bill to Annapolis, and I was the only one to testify in favor of HB 1221, which would answer the questions the community has about these very issues. If an officer kills somebody, maims somebody, sexually assaults somebody, lies, steals, destroys evidence, or acts in a discriminatory fashion, then all those questions that we would like to answer but can't legally, we could answer. And one of the things I explained to the community was, I can't provide those answers to you. I can't just fire somebody because of LEOBR, because then I violate the law. And then a judge or a hearing board chairman or a workman's review chairman has to put that person back into the department because I violated the law. And so that's why the law has got to change. And I'm looking for support this year, broader support, because again, I'm prepared to do that. I'm already on the record doing that, and I can send HB 1221 to you so you can see what I'm saying. Don't take it from me. Lastly, I was appointed to the Commission on Law Enforcement and the Administration of Justice, and the input of Prince George's County into that process is key. I've got a final draft of that report, not just myself, but I brought our Department of Social Services, Renee Pope, and I brought our Department of Homeland Security, Sharp Flaherty, into that conversation, because Prince George's County is a leader in multidisciplinary approaches to problem solving and equity. And so these are passionate issues that I have championed prior to these things occurring. I am not going to defend myself because I know that my record at this point doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we've done up to this point. All that matters is what we do going forward. But those are the steps that we've been taking, and I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has. I'm privileged to be part of this esteemed conversation, and I'll go anywhere and I'll answer any question at any point anybody has, period.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that point, Chief. And two things, you're the first officer, law enforcement person I've heard actually say the word reform. And secondly, you got to come to my show first before you go to Angela's show. I'll talk to you soon.
Well, I'll be happy to be there. And Madam Executive, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of your panel. If you don't mind, I am going to go jump on Delegate Barnes' panel at this point and join the colleagues who left earlier.
And let me say, Chief, I am a fan of yours. Based on what you just said, you know, I was talking about how the police are somewhat viewed as enemies of men in impoverished communities. We don't give them the benefit of the doubt. But it's folks like you, when you talk and tell us your commitment to us, we give you your support. You've proven that you've earned our support. You're no longer enemy of the Black men in the impoverished community. You're an ally, and we thank you.
Oh, well, God bless you for saying that. Let me just offer this. You know, my father was a police officer. I'm a police officer. So this is the second generation for me. But I grew up having a view of policing, of the integrity required to do this job, of the honesty required to do this job. And the reality is that when I got to this job, I found that the culture didn't live up to my expectations. And my goal has been to change that, because I am tired of Prince George's County, my home where I grew up, being marginalized. We deserve the very best. And this community deserves a police department that supports and serves, and no one, going back to my family's, my far-flung family's experiences in Germany in the 1930s, we don't impose the law, we enforce the law on behalf of the community, and no one should live in fear. No one should live in oppression. And all I've tried to do is bring my vision into alignment with reality. It's a fight, but it's a fight I'm going to take on. When I hear things like that from yourself, then I am encouraged. And again, there's nothing that this county executive cannot overcome. There's nothing they're going to throw at her that we won't prevail on. But thank you for saying that to me, because it's a tough moment and I appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. You got the Judge Mathis stamp of approval. Boy, we have to go to our county executive, Madam County Executive. We need to come to you for closing remarks.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, Joe Claire. It's Scott Bolden, Council County Exec, also Brooks. I've got to jump on. In fact, they're calling me right now. I want to thank you for your leadership and all the participants. I'm big fans of everyone, and it's going to take all of us to figure this out together. And I've really enjoyed being a part of the team. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think not only Scott, but I just want to thank everyone for participating today. Judge Mathis, can't say how much I appreciate it. I have to tell you that I called Judge Mathis, as he mentioned, it's been many, many years ago, didn't know him at all, and said, you know what, I have, and it turns out we had 1,000 African-American boys, 13 to 18 years old, who we needed to come to. We offered them free camping opportunities. We offered them mentoring. Judge Mathis said, count me in, and flew from Detroit to Prince George's County to be able to encourage and inspire the young men there. And he's held tight to us since then, even though he's not from Prince George's County. We're going to adopt him because he has been here for the youth of this county. So thank you so much. And he didn't hesitate. I called him this past weekend and said, we got to do this. Can you come and talk to the people of Prince George's County? He didn't blink. He said, just tell me what day, what time I'm going to show up. And he did. So thank you so much. To Calvin Hawkins, my dear friend on the council. I'm telling you, Calvin's story, every time I hear it, just sends chills up my arms. That, you know, God can use all of us and has a plan for us. And I'm just so grateful to you, Calvin, for your integrity. Thank you for your strength. Calvin, you talk about a movement. Boy, the people who follow Calvin will walk through a wall for him because they know what I know. He's the real deal. So thank you so much, Calvin, not only for inspiring young people and for being unashamed of your testimony, the one that only God can give you, and you use it well. But we just thank you so much for how you're using it to elevate our community. We appreciate you. Nicole, Dr. Belina Shaw, we are proud to have you on Team Prince George's. We thank you. Angie, I know had to jump off as well. But thank you all so much. Shamar, thank you so much, sir. Also, I see him there. And to the poet laureate who got us started on this call, we thank that brother for his talent and for sharing it with us. You heard from Chief Stawinski. So anyway, and then for you, Joe, Claire, who likewise should be hiding from us by now. We call this brother, man, we wear him out. I mean, wear him out. We need you. We need you. If it's for the census block party, there's nothing that he says no to. He is a born and raised true through and through Prince Georgian. You hear that? Proud Prince Georgian, and not just proud by words, but his actions are there. So we love you. We thank you so much for hosting us. And then for all of those who tuned in today, be encouraged. We know these are terrible and turbulent and perilous times, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I know that when this storm passes, boy, they haven't seen anything yet. You know what? This is a movement. This is what a movement feels like. It hurts when it's happening, but oh my gosh, we are heading somewhere together. And my commitment to everybody listening who wonders what I believe about justice, I have to tell you that we won't rest. That's the truth of the matter. You heard already about proactivity and accountability. You heard that early on in this call. And again, I echo what the chief said. It's what we've been about. It's what I have been about every day that I have been in office. And I think that everyone knows that this is my hometown and we won't stop working. You know what? It's not perfect. I could never say that. If that were true, that officer wouldn't have done what he did this past Saturday. It's not perfect, but every time they step across the line, no matter who it is, we're going to bring them back in line and make sure that the humanity of the people who are here is foremost in what happens when we serve. We serve people and we look at their humanity. We treat people fairly. Equality is important. So every challenge we have, we're going to mount together and we're going to get to the other side of this. So thank you all for tuning in. This won't be our last conversation. We appreciate just your tuning in today. So thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, everybody, we end with this. We have a poet who is going to knock us out and send us home.
All right, let's go. You can't truly imprison a person as long as their mind still wanders past the inhibitions of a singled out reality forced onto a people. Metaphorically, I mean, you can break free from your chains as long as you're willed enough to believe you're free. But realistically, I mean, it takes more than a president, a few speeches, and an association to make you feel like we getting anywhere. Through tears swimming down the side of my face, I read once again another one of my brothers was killed. Not related by blood, but we might as well be the way this pain reached down to the pit in my stomach because black bodies ain't just black on the outside. It's terrifying to think we had a few years without any racial violence, at least for the nonsense the media puts on your screen, posterizing the immaturity and deviance of their own race because they're used to it, but hiding the truth of how they feel against this black nation and black people because if the murderer was black too, it would mean nothing to them. It's wicked how arrest-wise, our innocent men are in the same category as bombers and mass murderers, at least in hindsight. Be hindsight, put your hands behind your back, stop resisting sight. But even at that, I've always known the sound of our halting breath would be the loudest sound ever made, like choir. but they really must be deaf that they can't hear this orchestra, yet can hear ever so clearly the sound of themselves losing money. There's nothing sadder than a rich white man having to come out of pocket, not like we're watching Black people come out of their life. I can honestly say it felt good to watch our people stand their ground. Like I've seen multiple posts with a man wearing a hat saying, "Make racists catch the fade again." Now I'm not into violence, and this ain't basketball, but it just might take a fade to win, because it's obvious it takes more than a worldwide pandemic to stop injustice. You can hide behind a voice, one name, one area, but you can't hide their skin. So chilling in your home, being silent might help you, but just makes matters worse for us. Them boys in blue just threw a Black woman off her balcony and covered it up as a suicide, and the National Guard is on their way to Minneapolis as we speak. So peaceful or not, it doesn't matter if you're Ahmaud or Sean or Brianna or George, we aren't safe. It's why fighting with our mind is such an unappreciated art form, because the mind can't be broken if it's made of steel. Stop fighting with your fists and fight with your words. This pen and just a blade is my whole arsenal. Be stubborn. Because it was never that peaceful protests weren't getting anywhere. It was our all too familiar trait of giving up when victory seems too far. Trust me, if Rome wasn't built in a day, then peace sure won't be gained in a week. Tunnel vision is a valuable asset through the process of turning the tide of a new world order, and losing sight of that is a detrimental blow to everything we stand for as a people, and losing ain't an option.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you all panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time. Judge Mathis, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. County Executive,
Thank you,
also,
Judge.
thank you so much for having me be part of this. It is an honor to serve my beloved county. And of course, this conversation will continue. I thank you all so much. And thanks everybody who tuned into this. Please take something away from this and share it with someone who was not on this, who didn't view this today.